we've got over 100 engineering colleges, over 20 medical institutions, and a host of research institutes with a global outlook. Now, education has been a beacon in the country. Education in Bangalore has been a beacon for the country. Now, the question is, with this summit in perspective, what can we do to bolster it in the coming decades? Now, our education panel is going to just be focusing on that, innovation and entrepreneurship, and how do we amplify ourselves in the national and the global stage. So we are going to dive into this panel discussion right now, and to deliberate this, we've got some fantastic panelists who are going to be joining us and giving us that insight that we need. Our first panelist is the director of the Indian Institute of Science. He's also a fellow of the Indian Academy of Sciences and the National Academy of Sciences here in India, and a Homi Bhabha Fellow. He was also awarded the J.C. Bose National Fellowship. He has been a member of the Department of Mathematics at IISc since 1992, and his research interests include nonlinear dynamics and chaos and time series analysis. He was recognized as the Knight in the Order of the Academic Palms, a Chevalier by the government of France, and he's also been honored with the Distinguished Alumnus Award by BITS Pilani. Please join me in welcoming on stage Professor Govindan Rangarajan. Professor Rangarajan, if we could have you join us. Thank you, Professor. Please now join me in welcoming on stage the director of the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. Prior to this, he was the director of IIM in Indore. He is also currently the Ramcharan Chair Professor in Innovation and Leadership, and earlier, he held the Jamuna Raghavan Chair in Entrepreneurship at IIMB. He is an IIT Kanpur, Stanford, and IIMA alumnus, and his main areas of interest are strategy and innovation. He's also been listed in the Thinkers 50 India list, ranking the most influential management thinkers from India. Please join me in welcoming on stage Professor Rishikesha Krishnan. Professor Krishnan. Thank you, sir. Please now welcome on stage the Registrar of the National Law School of India, University, Bengaluru. Earlier, he was the founding dean at the School of Law at BML Munjal University, Gurugram, and he also taught at the Azim Premji University, where he headed the newly founded LLM program. He holds a DPhil from the University of Oxford Faculty of Law and an LLM in taxation from the New York University. He has extensive research and publication experience in legal issues related to international taxation, commercial law, statutory interpretation, and he's the author of a leading text on Indian international taxation titled International Taxation, the Indian Perspective. Please welcome on stage Professor Nigam Nuggehalli. Professor? Thank you, Professor. And to lead this discussion, I'd like to invite the founder and managing trustee of Neev Schools and the Neev Academy. Now, Neev was established in 2005 with a vision to avoid the extremes and really strike the chord of balance for overall early childhood development. Now, she's worked in diverse fields of scientific research, corporate restructuring, finance, and well, now in education. Her interests include reading on education, brain development, history, and India. Please join me in welcoming on stage Kavita Gupta Sabharwal. Kavita? If I could also request all of you to give me a quick sound check to make sure that you're loud, clear, and audible.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. Hello.
Lovely. Kavita?
Hi.
Lovely. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome, all of you. I'm so glad that we had that break with Praveen in there, because the previous panel truly had me depressed. Thinking of the city's existence in questions is really scary, but truly the two greatest challenges that the city has to solve are water and sanitation on one side and infrastructure. Both of them are very hard problems to solve. I'm hoping that education is an easy problem for us to solve and leverage Bangalore with that to great heights. So I'm going to let you open. I think it's just, Bangalore has been a fabulous city. We have not just the entrepreneurial and the ecosystem reasons, but also historical reasons that go in favor of Bangalore being an education hub. What are your views on Bangalore as a premier institution for higher education? Is it one already? Why? Can it be one? How? if you all would, if any one of you would like to start.
Okay. So, yeah, I do believe that Bangalore is educational hub. Given the three institutions here and many other institutions like JNC, Raman Research Institute, and so on. And on top of that, we have the supporting ecosystem now, because as you know, for students, the startup ecosystem has become very important. That is there in plenty in Bangalore. Then you have research opportunities in companies with all the multinationals setting up their research centers here, like Google, Microsoft, and so on. So given this ecosystem, I would say that definitely, as far as the nation is concerned, we are an educational hub. But what is missing is the international piece. I think we are still, not an international education hub like many of the other great cities around the world are, like say Boston or so on. So that is something we should aim for. So I would say partly it's true. As far as India is concerned, it's true, but not internationally yet.
Thank you.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to what Professor Rangarajan just said is, I think while we have very good institutions at the highest level, we need to build a little more depth. For example, you have outstanding law school, you have an outstanding science and engineering school, we have outstanding management school. But then if you go down the rankings, for example, you probably won't find any other institution from Bangalore in the top 20. So I think there's still room to build more depth in the city and also to strengthen the broader set of institutions that exist around us. So I think there's good start, but still somewhere to go.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add to what's been said before already. I think we have made great strides in how we educate young people in this country, in this city. We have been helped by factors that we really didn't have any control over. For example, the way the city is, its weather, its cosmopolitan population, the government investment in technology and industries. So there have been factors that we can't take credit for, but which has helped Bangalore become an education hub. And I think now we should start thinking about how we can consciously try and build on that. Globalization has occurred in many ways in Bangalore already. There was an audience reaction to how globalization started in the 90s. And we need to see how we can globalize education as well, both in terms of the kind of people, researchers and teachers that we can attract to Bangalore from all over the world, and also in terms of the students that we can get. We already have students all over from India, and we'll try and see how we can get students from across the world as well.
It's true, the globalization is evident not just in the industrial impact in Bangalore, but also right here on this panel, the kind of people we have. Only one person grew up in Bangalore and the others didn't, and you all have been all around the world and you've come back. I think we clearly have become an education hub, particularly in engineering, but the question is, in other spaces, can we become an education hub in business, in law, today there aren't that many cities in the country. I mean, India, you have Delhi, that's huge. Bangalore is probably next after Delhi. Maybe Ahmedabad comes in there as well. Hyderabad to some extent, but I'm wondering what will be required to actually push it to that next level? What are the things that can be brought together? The individual institutions, how do we bring it together to really make it a hub of education is what I'm more wondering about. But I think so the other thing is education has been known in the US and elsewhere to also catalyze change. And Jonas Salk talks about that profound question of our greatest responsibility is to be good ancestors, and education is known to catalyze change in cities. How do you see higher education or your own institutions contribute to the growth of Bangalore and to future generations, through research, through education, of course, but community initiatives, shaping a better tomorrow?
I think here Indian Institute of Science has had a long history. For example, the space research organization, Vikram Sarabhai was a faculty at IIC before he set up the space research organization. And one of our directors earlier, Satish Dhawan, was jointly director of IIC and ISRO. But also looking at industry, there was a question about how this whole globalization, the Silicon Valley started. I would say a precursor to Texas Instruments coming in was setting up of the electronic city. And that was set up by an alumnus of IIC. Not many people know this, R.K. Baliga. He was a chairman of Kionics, and he was instrumental. He went to the chief minister then and said that we need to create a Silicon Valley of India. And then finally he was asked to set up the electronic city. So which was in some sense a precursor to where we are today. Or if you look at CPRI, that again came out of Indian Institute of Science. And so Wipro also had some of its initial employees and small offices in IISc before it became so big now. So therefore, I think institutions like ours play a big role, but I think we can do more. I think, for example, we still have not played the role Stanford has in the Silicon Valley. Yeah. I think because especially in terms of very influential startups and so on, I think there's still room for improvement there.
I think if you look back at the history of IIM Bangalore, in the early years, I find we did actually do quite a bit in the city. Recently, as part of our Golden Jubilee, I found some early report where our faculty had tried to optimize the Bangalore transport system routes at that time. I don't know what actually happened with that report, whether it was implemented or not, but they certainly seemed to be quite engaged with this particular subject. I think over the years we have played a role, but I'm not sure how core or central it has been as far as Bangalore is concerned. We have done much more with Karnataka as a state, because a lot of the research, particularly faculty have done, has gone into policy making at the state level. Just to give you an example, one of our faculty members worked very closely with the current Karnataka Administrative Reforms Commission. We've had other faculty who have worked very closely with, for example, helping the commercial tax department improve their GST collection and so on. So a lot of this has been more at the state level than necessarily at the city level. But I can think of one concrete example, certainly, where we have helped the city more on the industrial side. In 1998, before the IT industry had really taken off, our institute realized that there is going to be a big need for good managerial talent in the software industry. We connected with some of the top IT companies here, and we started a weekend MBA program specifically designed for the software industry. That program now, 25 years later, has been one of the biggest or most effective methods for the software industry to train their existing high potential employees in management. And they have contributed across the entire software and IT services sector. So that's certainly a very, I think, tangible and concrete contribution we have made. But a lot of the other contributions, I believe, would be largely at the state level. The other area where we have made a significant contribution, I think, to the city is in terms of incubation and entrepreneurship. Our incubator, which was started in the year 2000, much ahead of many of the other entrepreneurship development activities in Bangalore, has worked extensively with entrepreneurs outside IIM, because honestly, not that many of our students go directly into entrepreneurship. So right from the beginning, our incubator has worked closely with entrepreneurs who are not necessarily part of IIMB. And in a recent study which was published in one of the newspapers, IIMB has been identified as the single biggest contributor in terms of mentorship to startups in the country, and a good number of those have actually been in Bangalore. So I think that's another area where we have made a concrete impact.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
Nigam.
Thank you. I like the way you put it. You're talking about institutions as catalysts for change, educational institutions. And I think it's really important to kind of dwell on what that means for an education institution. Right? It could mean different things for different people. When the National Law School was formed, it really meant, I think, it was a catalyst for change in the very basic sense, which is to have a reasonably working law university that takes law teaching seriously. At the time it was formed, that wasn't the case in many parts of India. Right? But I think over the years, what we have seen is that that idea of catalyst for change has gone beyond just good teaching and good assessment. And at least I can speak for how the law school has developed over the last 35 years, is that we are trying to figure out how we can intervene in the larger ecosystem that we have today. I was struck by the discussion we were having in the previous panel, where I think almost after a discussion of every issue, there was a discussion about law and regulation. So they were talking about law and regulation.
Law.
So, for example, the panelists were talking about how certain plans developed at the BBMP level are not enforceable, and that the master plan, the BBMP master plan is enforceable, but many other plans are not enforceable. That's a legal question. That's a question of law and regulation. And we have been intervening in that. So the law school has intervened and has addressed various areas of law, whether it's child rights or technology or environment or contracts, and talked about how we can catalyze change in these areas through legal and policy reforms. There's a Town and Country Planning Act, which was discussed in the last panel, which has a bearing on how urban architecture develops over a period of time. And it is actually the responsibility of law schools to figure out how to develop that piece of legislation and add to it.
It does feel a little bit like with anything that you start to do, any entrepreneurial organization, you do have to take on much more in India than you do with anywhere abroad, because you do have to sort out a whole bunch of other problems as well. The National Education Policy, the NEP 2020, it talks about inclusivity, interdisciplinarity. All of you all have dealt with some of that. I know that you have a whole initiative going on with interdisciplinarity, employability. There is a lot in there. Is there a need to redesign? I know that all of you all are also looking at different aspects of not just being the law program, but now adding other programs. I know the IIM Bangalore is adding on another campus a whole bunch of other streams. Institute of Science has not just had the masters and the PhD programs, but now also the bachelors. Expanding all of this, is the NEP a credible roadmap for change? Do we need to change? In the context of your own institution, what's working well for you? What needs to change? Thoughts?
Yeah, NEP does have a good roadmap, I think, especially in terms of interdisciplinarity. And I must say here, all three institutions, we are planning on collaborating together, combining something in law, management, and science and engineering. For example, say AI would be one very nice area for the three of us. So we are talking about that. But even within IISc, I think, for example, we are starting a medical school, so that we bring together science, engineering, and medicine on one campus, which is something which is missing in India. All our medical institutions are standalone institutions, like AIIMS, JIPMER, or PGI Chandigarh. So that is something that we are attempting. But the structure, the entire educational structure and the requirements have to change. For example, abroad, an engineer can then can become a doctor. So they can do a basic engineering, one can do arts and become a doctor. Here, that is not possible. Either you start with an MBBS right after high school, or you're stuck. I mean, you cannot change your area after that. So those, and for example, somebody who does a bachelor in mechanical engineering cannot apply for a faculty positions in many institutions for, say, electrical engineering, even though the person may have changed. Or somebody in chemical engineering who does biology cannot apply to your biology department. So all these are, even though in IISc we don't have restrictions, but most institutions have such restrictions. So you need these regulations to change, of making it much more open for people to shift from discipline to discipline, combine disciplines. Those are things which are, I think, where you need work to be done further. I think there you may need some structural changes at the government level, like for example, permitting engineers or arts students to pursue MBBS. That's not something which institutions can do, but that has to come at a national level. But only when you do have all these interdisciplinary approaches going on, we'll be able to solve the problems of today. I think, for example, if you take the mRNA vaccine, there's a prime example of interdisciplinarity. You have, the basic biology developing the vaccine, required for developing the vaccine. You have nano engineering, nanoscience to do the lipid coating for the mRNA vaccine. And then, of course, the clinicians to actually implement and do clinical trials and make it available on the field. So you have science, engineering, and medicine coming together. So without that, this whole breakthrough would not have been possible, which saved billions of lives around the world. So I think these are examples which tell you, or climate change, whatever you look at, these are all interdisciplinary areas, and without an interdisciplinary approach, we are going to fail miserably in tackling these very important problems. So I think that is very critical, but there are structural changes which are required also to enable this in many institutions.
Right. Just quick question for you. Will MCI norms allow you to open medical?
Yeah. So that is okay. That's why we have both a
without
hospital.
that infrastructure of hospital and all of that stuff.
We are building a hospital.
Oh gosh, bring home the woods. Okay.
So we are doing both, but yes, they do allow. But as far as degrees, and it's very straitjacket, in India, most of the, so hopefully that will change as we go along.
Right. And, on the mRNA vaccine, also business was a huge aspect because the woman who led up the entire project, the Oxford vaccine, AstraZeneca, that kind of saved the world, was a VC, right? So, Rishi, your views on this NEP, is it a credible roadmap?
So, yeah, I think the NEP, the NEP constitutes a pretty good analysis of the problems. I'm not 100% sure it necessarily has all the solutions. There's certainly lots of good ideas embedded in the NEP document, but how you translate those ideas into something that works at scale is still a little bit of a question. I think the big challenge, particularly for an institution like ours, is that we were, in a way, not really designed for scale. I mean, even now, 50 years down the road, we still have 1,300 students, 1,400 students in our institute. That's because of the way the whole thing was conceived. Can we do something at a larger scale? Yes, perhaps we can, we should. But we need to do a lot of reimagination of how we'll go about things in order to do that. So I think that the big challenge at this time really is how do we redesign for scale without compromising or in any way reducing the quality of what we offer. And that's a design problem we now have to grapple with in an environment where I think the kind of funding which is required to really make that transition is not easily available. Because government doesn't have the money available to make this transition possible. The alternate funding mechanisms are also somewhat expensive. So how do you really make this transition? I think you might say that your guys are a management institute, figure it out. I think that's probably true, but that's the challenge we face at this point of time.
So what can we do in the meanwhile to create that sort of Bangalore as a hub of education and step up this entire process of education change and reform in the country? Is it needed?
No, it's definitely needed. And I think as Professor Rangarajan mentioned, multidisciplinarity is important. What I'm not so sure about is whether all institutions need to be multidisciplinary, but that's maybe a discussion for a different forum. What I'm really fairly enthused about is all the new private universities that are coming into the fray. Even in Bangalore, we have several of them, and many of them once again have really interesting ideas and visions of what they want to do. I'm only hoping that they will actually be able to execute on them. Because if you think of it, except for Bangalore University, which has its own challenges, and I think has been split into multiple parts and so on, you don't really have a good multidisciplinary university in Bangalore. There are several who are trying to get there, but they haven't got there yet. But I hope they will over time. I think that will be a big game changer as far as Bangalore is concerned.
Is that one of the changes you all are planning with the liberal arts school?
Yeah, that's what we would ultimately like to do. And the first step is, of course, getting into undergrad education, getting into multidisciplinary education. But as I said, to me, the challenge right now looks at how we will finance that whole thing. The vision we have, the plan we have, but what we are not too clear about right now is the financial path to make that happen. But you're right, yeah. In a sense, that's what we are trying to do.
Thank you. Professor Nigam?
Thank you. Well, I think three things. On scale, I agree. I think scale is important. In fact, the National Law School is scaling up. And scaling results in opportunities for inclusivity, different kinds of people from different backgrounds, and also diversity of thought. We have people coming to law school who want to do different things. They all don't want to go and end up in law firms. They can litigate, they can go to think tanks, they can go to NGOs. So it's, we get, with scale, we get inclusivity and diversity, which is really important for us. So scale, I think the NEP emphasis on scale is quite important. And the next thing is multidiscipline and what that means. But before I go to that, my second point is that sometimes some domains are subject to standards of education that they can't, that they have to abide by. So for example, all law schools in India are subject to the Bar Council of India regulations. And so they may be, while we can implement scale and multidisciplinary and credits, it will be subject to what the Bar Council of India rules say. So there will be some restrictions on that. But coming to this idea of multidisciplinary studies is interesting. I like that there's some diversity of opinion here itself on the panel about the importance of multidisciplinarity. It's interesting. NLS was multidisciplinary before NEP came along. We had a BA LLB program which combined the arts with law for mandatorily for all students. So if a student, when I joined NLS, I had to study in my first year history, sociology, economics, and political science before I could start studying law. And I like to think it really helped me a lot. But, and so I'm on board with it. I think it's important that we need to have some multidisciplinary dialogues between different domains. But we need, and I think Rishi might agree with me on this, I think we need, when we say we need to do something multidisciplinary, we need excellent teachers who have bought into that idea, right? And who are able to deliver it, right? Because it's quite a challenge. We recently started the 3-year LLB program at NLS. So the first time in the history of the university, we can't control who comes into the LLB program with what background, right? So until now, with the 5-year LLB, we have high school graduates coming into the program, so we know what they've done. They've done their CBSE and their ICSE and have come there. But we can't figure that out for our entrance into the 3-year LLB program because they've done all kinds of college degrees. They've done sciences, engineering, political science, medicine. And then when they come in and when we start teaching them the things, the legal domain, we then understand what true multidisciplinary teaching might mean, because the engineers are asking us, you just tell us what the legal text says. And if I tell them that the legal text, I can't demonstrate what the meaning of a legal text is, there's no lab for me to do it, they're perplexed. Because they're used to a certain kind of thinking about what truth is and about what demonstrability of thought is, which is very different from how liberal studies and humanities go. And that's where you need teachers who are bought into it, who actually are not doing it for the sake of checking boxes. They're actually enthusiastically trying to figure out with the students how to approach 2-3 disciplines at the same time. And that's a challenge.
So for law, this whole angle of interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity has, connotations not just in the teaching, but also in the graduates that you finally have. Many countries have a great specialization in law of just various different kinds of law. I know you've studied tax law and others as well. So specialist versus interdisciplinary firms, which are very existent right now, how do we meet this need in law?
Yeah, there are firms.
Are you dealing with this? Or are we just, are we continuing to produce generalists and?
Well, look, there are firms out there who are both journalists and specialists, right? And especially, this has been a recent trend. So we have technology-related firms that do a lot of tech-related work. And then we have commercial corporate law firms, and then you have firms that are doing other things. But that's at the stage of practice, when students graduate and when they do all those kind of things. But I get these questions, though, quite a lot from students who are entering law school, right, who are in their first year of law school. They're asking me, what do I specialize in, right? And then my answer to them is, don't worry about it. You know, every firm, whether they're specialists or journalists, are going to be, first of all, going to be looking for good lawyers, right? And by good lawyers, we mean good lawyering skills, you know, skills of communication, and skills of articulation. And that's what we teach you at law school. So you can discover, it's a matter of discovery for you. You're either 17 or 22 or 25 when you're coming into law school. You can discover for yourself what you need to specialize in. I think that comes at the latter part of your journey. I think the kind of lawyering skills we teach.
In the workplace?
In the
workplace, really?
In the workplace, and also maybe towards the end of your law journey. Yeah? Okay. But really, for the vast majority of students, a substantial part of that time will be dealt with just doing skills that are transferable, that can transfer across sectors.
Thank you. Professor Govindan, a question for you. I know that science is something that we are all as a culture, a race, we're just caught up with science education in school, and but the enrollments in pure sciences are one of the lowest in the country. Is that a challenge? Do you see, and we know that Careers of the Future, the World Economic Forum, they talk about the 16 career buckets, 14 of them have sciences in them. Why are enrollments in science low? Is it a capacity constraint? Are there other reasons? Is this normal everywhere in the world?
Well, always, yeah. I think everywhere probably science enrollment would be lower. It depends on how you define it. But I don't think, given that we are a large country, probably we have enough pool of students interested in science. And we have, the problem is in quality. What is the quality of education they get? I think we have many students going to science in various colleges who have not been taught properly. So I think where we need to really scale up is in quality institutions offering quality education in science. And that is where I think, it's very important that many of the leading educational institutions have now taken up, have started bachelors in science. New institutions have been set up. We also have started a bachelor's in science. So there, I think once students see the quality of education they get and what sort of opportunities open up once they do such a course, then I think more and more students get interested. So I would say, if you just look at numbers, we have enough numbers. It's just that we need better trained science students.
Yeah, it always surprises me that it's the lowest enrollment. Actually, 20% of our students go into science education, and there's a large chunk of 40% that goes into the arts, another big chunk that goes into commerce, and then there's, I think 15 or 18% that goes straight into not pure sciences as such, but engineering directly. So,
as I said, that is okay. Given the size of our student population, I think 20% is quite large. Yeah. It's just that we need quality education in being imparted to them.
Before that, in school?
No, I'm saying even leave alone schools.
Even in colleges itself. Yeah. We don't have that capacity constraint, is what you're saying. Rishi, quickly, last question. You spoke about the challenges with funding, but a question for you. Do rich countries have better universities? The US, UK seem to be the big hubs for education today, for elite education, the quality, the ecosystem that they have, and how they're funded, clearly. So do rich countries have better universities, or are they rich because they have better universities?
So I think you have to look at it in a historical context. For India, definitely the challenge is, given the aspirations we have as a nation today, I don't think we have adequate number of high quality universities for sure, and therefore we certainly need to develop them. I don't think there is a sort of cause and effect kind of relationship. I see it more as a co-evolution. Along with the country developing, higher education has to develop because the country benefits from higher education also benefits from a good environment. So I think both of these have to go in tandem. But the one thing I'm clear about is what I mentioned earlier, that if we want to meet all the aspirations we have, Vikasit Bharat in 2047, for example, then higher education has to scale up with quality in a much larger way than it is doing today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining here. This could be a very long conversation, but thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you, Kavita. We now have a little memento for all of you, so please join us. And I'd like to welcome on stage KV Subramania, our associate editor here at Deccan Herald, to hand out our little mementos and caricatures to all our guests. If I could request you, all of you, to finally step forward. Thank you.